Welcome to this week's story at Graveyard Dance. The story you're about to hear is a tragic, senseless case of a loss of life of a beautiful young lady whose life was taken from her far too soon. We warn you up front, it's graphic and will probably either terrify you or really piss you off. It did the latter for me. Hopefully the two responsible are getting their rewards as you watch this video. Now on to the story. One of the most important decisions one can make is choosing who your friends are. This is a fact for many reasons. It could be that someone you're thinking about makes bad choices, which in turn could come to involve you in some way, or it could be that maybe the person you're thinking about hanging around with has ulterior motives for becoming your friend. Choosing the wrong people as friends could have life-changing or deadly consequences, as with the case of Cassie Jo Stoddard. 16-year-old Cassie was a bright and cheerful, extremely well-liked teenager at Pocatello High School in Bannock County, Idaho. She made excellent grades and always had a happy, sunny disposition and had plans to graduate from high school and become an attorney. She had worked hard all through school to keep her grades up to fulfill a dream that would eventually never come true thanks to local morons Brian Lee Draper and Tori Michael Adamczyk. These two Einsteins were classmates and friends. Brian Draper, who was also the same age as Cassie, had spent his younger years in Utah before his family moved. He was enrolled in Pocatello High School. One of the first friends he met there was another local geek named Tori Adamczyk. Neither of the boys were popular with any of the other students and found it very difficult to make other friends aside from Cassie, who was naturally kind to everyone she met, and her boyfriend, Matt Beckham. Both Matt and Cassie felt empathy for Brian and Tori, so they often would invite them to hang out. You would think that if only a couple of classmates were the only ones who actually liked you enough to be your friend, that you'd have enough sense to appreciate it, but not these two clowns. Obviously, they had no idea of what being a true friend to anyone meant. They only thought of their own selfish and ignorant desires. Draper and Adamczyk both had an intense love of movies, horror movies in particular. They even wanted to become filmmakers themselves and often carried around a video recorder filming everything they did, which would eventually be one of the many things that would be their undoing. As I mentioned before, these two weren't the most bright crayons in the box by any means. Even had they not recorded their confessions, they would have been caught in no time. Cassie was a very responsible girl and liked to keep things well organized. She was the type of person who could be trusted, and her family all knew it. Her aunt and uncle Allison and Frank Contreras had just bought a home on Whispering Cliffs Drive in northeast Bannock County. They had a few pets who needed cared for when they and their 13-year-old daughter went away on vacation. Cassie Jo was the most logical person they could think of to house sit. Other than feeding and watering the family's dogs and cats, there wasn't much to be done around the large spacious house, so Cassie got permission to invite over her boyfriend to watch the movie, Kill Bill. What Cassie didn't know was, Matt had invited their friends Brian and Tori to tag along for the evening. Cassie wasn't exactly crazy about the idea, but she felt, what harm could there be? She'd soon find out. Before the movie started, the boys asked for a tour of the huge home, so Cassie and Matt took the boys around and showed them the house, including the huge basement. While on the tour, Brian Draper had secretly unlocked the back door before heading to the living room to watch the movie with the others. Little did Adam or Cassie Jo know though, watching the movie was the last thing on the boys' minds. They had some evil plans for later that evening. What Cassie nor Matt had realized was, the two rejects had been watching the movie, Scream, and had gotten the crazy idea to reenact the events portrayed in the movie. Not only had they went to a local pawn shop and bought the knives for the crime, they both bought black clothing as well as Scream-inspired masks to terrorize the couple as well as several other people they had listed in a crime diary. They even bragged about their plans on video. I told you they weren't very bright. During the movie, the pair told their friends that they had changed their minds and had decided to go see a movie in town at the local theater. Cassie got up and walked the two young men to the door and thanked them for coming over and said that she'd see them at school. She had no idea whatsoever that in just a few short hours, all her hopes, her dreams and plans for life would be over, and for the most ignorant of reasons. Instead of going to the theater to watch a movie, the two bought tickets for the movie, Pulse, but they had no plans on sticking around to watch it. They headed back to Cassie's family's house after getting dressed in their black clothing and after picking up their knives and masks. They quietly snuck in the door Draper had unlocked and walked down to the dark basement to hide. The plan was to make enough noise to lure Matt and Cassie downstairs to kill them. They broke an ashtray against the stairs thinking that would bring them down, but it didn't. So, the pair began messing with the fuse box, cutting power to various parts of the house. Cassie didn't go to the basement, but Matt did. He flipped the breaker and walked calmly back upstairs. The fact that neither Draper or Adam Adamczyk made an attempt to hurt Matt speaks volumes about how big of a coward they both are. They had no problem ganging up on and attacking a defenseless 16-year-old girl, but when faced with a strapping young lad their size, they chickened out. Go figure. Anywho, Cassie and Matt finished watching their movie together, but Cassie was terrified of everything that had happened that night, from the noises in the basement, to the lights going on and off by themselves, and now the family dog was going insane barking at the basement door. Unfortunately, Matt had a curfew he had to go by, but he didn't want to leave Cassie and Cassie didn't want him to go. The pair called Matt's mom to see if he could stay. She told them that she wouldn't allow Matt to stay there all night, but she would let Cassie come stay with them and that she would gladly return her to the home tomorrow morning. Sadly, Cassie turned down this offer that may have ended up saving her life. As we mentioned, Cassie Jo was a very responsible young lady. She gave her word to house sit for the family and she didn't want to break her word. Reluctantly, she kissed Matt goodnight and gave him a hug and said goodnight. She had no way of knowing this would be their final goodbye. She returned to the house and sat down in a chair to watch TV. It wasn't long before she started hearing noises in the basement again. The lights soon went off, scaring Cassie nearly to death. It's unknown why she simply didn't just call the police. Maybe it's because when Matt went to the basement earlier, he hadn't seen anything abnormal. Maybe she didn't want to look silly if they came and didn't find anything. That would have been far better though than what eventually happened. She walked to the basement door and called out to whoever was down there. "Who's there? Come out or I'll kick your ass," she said. They were most likely her last words. As she made her way to the bottom of the stairs, each of the boys came out of their hiding spots to taunt and terrorize the poor teenage girl. They both began to stab her with at least 2 separate knives, but not all the cuts were made to kill. Many of them were self-defense wounds and a lot of them were just to antagonize the pain they were inflicting to maximize the torture. Of nearly 30 stab wounds, only 12 were considered fatal. Cassie's aunt and uncle and 13-year-old niece came home after their vacation, surprised to find all of the doors open and some of the windows broken. They went into the home to investigate and was calling out for Cassie when she was found by her young niece, who was absolutely horrified to find her beloved aunt covered in blood and stab wounds laying on the floor. Even her pinky finger had nearly been severed trying to fend off the attack. The police was called and suspicion soon turned to her boyfriend Matt. We looked for a photo of him, but there's none to be found that we can tell, so we will respect his privacy here and not really look too far for one. He took a lie detector test and also had an alibi from his mother. He was cleared of any suspicions. That left Brian and Tori to answer for their whereabouts. It didn't take long for police to drag the truth out of the bumbling duo. At first, they denied any involvement, and tried to use their movie ticket stubs for an alibi, but when police asked them what happened during the movie, neither could answer anything about it. They soon changed their stories and claimed that the police were right, that they hadn't gone to the movies, that they had instead been out breaking into cars at the time of Cassie's murder, but again, they proved that this too was a lie. No cars have been reported broken into that night. Soon, each of the boys were admitting that there had been a plan to quote scare Cassie. but that the other boy had killed her. Each had blamed the other. Brian led the police to what was left of the evidence. They had burned some and buried some of the other evidence at nearby Black Rock Canyon. While he tried to deny being involved, knowing that there would be a video cassette of him there bragging about the murder says volumes about how dumb these two were. Police found parts of the masks used to scare Cassie, the knives they used to kill her and some of the clothing that didn't get burned, but most importantly, they had gotten hours of videotape of these two buffoons planning and bragging about their plans to kill several, including what they had done to Cassie after the fact. It don't take a rocket scientist to figure out what happened next. They both received life in prison without parole. If these boys went into prison as virgins, and they probably had, most likely they won't be for long. And to think, they could have went on to have bright futures, had maybe went on to become the movie makers they had wanted to be and maybe even have families of their own with spouses and maybe a kid or two, but they gave up that possibility with their own stupidity and utter ignorant decisions. So, if you're ever thinking about making a similar decision, think about this. These two could have had a great life, but instead, they are sharing a cell with guys like this in a 10x10 cell. They also serve a lot of beans in prison, so not only do you have the smell of body odor and dirty socks, you also have the smell of prison farts to contend with while your fellow classmates are out living their best lives. There is nothing fun or glamorous about prison, so think before you act, folks. Rest in peace, sweet Cassie. Your family, friends and loved ones all miss you. Hopefully you're doing well and happy in heaven and will be reunited with your loved ones when their time comes. As far as Brian and Tori, they are still crying like little girls in prison about how unfair they think they have it. They have both filed appeals which so far, all has been denied, thank God. Hopefully, they will rot where they are. If you enjoyed today's story, we sure would appreciate a thumbs up and if you'd subscribe to our channel. It helps more than you could ever know. We also love hearing from our viewers. What would you like to hear about in the future? Tell us in the comments section below. You can find all our social media links there as well if you'd like to follow us. Anywho, till next time.